Hey everybody, welcome back and welcome to a new week. You know, I actually get really excited on Mondays or Sunday night, right? Because I do my little reflection and just right now I'm in such a good rhythm with many things, but especially with languages, right? And so every day I have these delightful moments with German and with Mandarin Chinese. But the thing is, I would also love to be having these same wonderful moments with Japanese, with Swedish, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, these languages that I have spent so much time learning and that I love to speak. I also love to consume them via all kinds of different input. I love these languages that I have chosen, to learn. And that got me thinking about, frankly, a really difficult video to make because it's a very difficult decision that we all have to make on a monthly, weekly, and probably even a daily basis as language learners, language lovers, enthusiasts, and of course, polyglots. So then this decision of, which language or languages do you want to be studying right now, whether it's today, tomorrow, this week, or just during this period of your life, well, it's a decision that's hard by itself, but it's made even more difficult when it's combined with other responsibilities in life, right? Like a full-time job, being a student, having a partner, having children perhaps, right? Or perhaps combined with other interests that you have. Maybe you like playing video games, maybe you're playing a musical instrument, right? Maybe you like cooking, and of course some of these things can overlap. And then maybe just things like time for relaxing. Maybe you wanna, play video games, watch TV, do nothing, surf the internet, go on YouTube and watch me. Sorry. And while there are ways to mitigate this problem because you could combine them with language learning, right? Maybe you could watch TV in a foreign language. You could play video games in French. You could watch a cooking show in Korean. But, first of all, those things tend to require a really high level in the language already. Then we also have to think about maintaining our languages if that's important to you. And then, it's also just still something you're gonna have to think about. So I'm gonna give you an example from my own life, or actually a couple of examples. So a while back when I first moved to Hamburg, Germany, this was in 2015, and I gotta tell you, my languages were kind of a mess back then. So I had really been just diving into so many languages prior to that. So I had learned some Arabic, some Hindi, some Swahili, a bit of Lingala, right? A whole bunch of different things. I had learned some Russian. I was just like learning languages left and right. And when I got to Germany, for some reason, that was a time of reflection where I realized, I had Japanese that at the time was at a very, very high level. And I had French that was also at that point really, really advanced. But then all my other languages, they were all, beginner. Some of them were even just low beginner. At best, some of them were like a low intermediate. And it just felt so out of control. Like it was just so difficult for me to even learn any of them, let alone maintain them. And so at that time in my life, I was faced with this very difficult decision, right? Which languages do I want to learn, right? At least right now. And so at that time, that's when I chose 7 foreign languages. Japanese, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, German, and Swedish. And I had decided that for the next pretty decent period of time, that was going to be my focus. And I put together a pretty sophisticated sort of system that evolved over time and that allowed me to learn all those languages very, very effectively. And a lot of that was because I didn't have any other projects, right? So I had a YouTube channel, but I wasn't super active. And other than that, I had work. And then, soon after that, languages became my work as I started tutoring and coaching people full time, also translating. And so I had enough time in my schedule and enough flexibility to where I was able to learn a lot of languages more or less simultaneously, But again, it required a pretty sophisticated system, which is a lot of what I wrote about in my book, How to Maintain Languages, because I did maintain those languages while continuing to learn them over time. But it also required a ton of time. And even then, I still had to make that very difficult decision to drop all the other languages that I had been learning. But now let's fast forward to today, right? So as many of you will know, currently I'm focusing on Mandarin Chinese and German. And like I said, I would love to be still studying all those other languages actively right now, but it is truly insane the amount of things I'm doing right now. And as I've alluded to a few times, there's a very good reason for why I am pushing so hard right now to build a future where I believe languages will become, once again, a much, much, much bigger part of my life. But for right now, even studying 2 languages right now, it's pretty ambitious. And so I just have to be truly delighted, and I'm really content, honestly, with just the fact that I'm able to improve my German every single day and improve my Mandarin Chinese every single day as well. But it doesn't make it any easier. In fact, just this last week, I was thinking about, oh my God, imagine if I could do a YouTube series where I just jump full force back into Japanese, right? Like just really document the process and what it's like to be someone who reached an extremely high level at one point. And over the years, I haven't spoken as much Japanese. My Japanese is certainly, it's not where it used to be, right? And so it's an interesting position to be in. And I would love to document the process of just jumping back in and seeing if I can get my level back to where it was, if I could start reading novels again in Japanese and all kinds of cool stuff. But it's not the time yet, right? I have to really think carefully before jumping into a project like that, because at the moment, it's just not practical. And so if I decide that is important to me, which it is, then I'm making plans for when I can finally do that in the hopefully not too distant future. But then even yesterday, I actually had an encounter where I went to a little food truck. So outside where I live, they're doing this nice thing where every week a food truck will come, and it's really good. There's like social distancing and it's really well orchestrated. And so yesterday we had a pizza truck, and I haven't had pizza in I don't remember last time I had pizza. What was really interesting is that everybody that worked on the truck, they were all deaf. And so they had this menu where basically they had, different signs that you could use to order. But the thing is, I didn't realize at first. They didn't have a sign that let you know, right? It was kind of a surprise. And so I went in wanting to ask some questions about the pizzas. And, I immediately realized that I was unable to communicate with them, right? And I actually felt really bad. I felt bad that I wasn't able to interact with these people in the way that I normally would. And I felt bad, as if I just wished I could communicate with them. And it made me really want to finally learn a sign language. And I've been debating this for many years. That's a whole different topic. But again, I had to just think to myself, just not today, right? Like soon, and I want to do that, but I can't do it just yet, right? And so I just tell you those stories to give you a really clear illustration of how I deal with this every day, right? I have to think really carefully about which languages I'm going to be studying right now. So the first reason why I'm making this video is simply to acknowledge not a problem, it's a decision, right? It's a difficult decision. And I think that just acknowledging it as a genuine thing that we all deal with, it's really helpful, because I do think this is probably one of the decisions that we as language learners on the whole probably procrastinate with the most, right? It's much easier to just kind of ignore this decision and just kind of roll with the punches, right? And then over the time, over years, you can end up like I did, right? When I went to Germany and I realized that, wow, this is really this is a challenge. Like I'm struggling right now to keep a handle on my language learning situation, and I had to think about it really carefully. So it's a lot easier to just not think about it. And so I hope that, first of all, just acknowledging this as a thing that is very legitimate and very genuine to have to deal with. I hope that helps some people to maybe just think like, oh yeah, you know, it's not a problem that I have. This is a normal thing that we all have to deal with, right? And I also hope that it will encourage some of us to actually think about this, you know, now, rather than perhaps a lot later and in ending up in a similar situation to me when I was in Germany. But I also do want to tell you a little bit about how I personally deal with this, right? And how I think about it and how I try to, you know, go through life as a polyglot, as a lover of languages. And so here's a few things. So one of the biggest things for me has been just reaching high levels in many of the languages that I speak, right, and that I've studied. So for example, getting to a really high level in French has been so helpful in maintaining a certain level in that language. Now my French today, it's rusty. It's not as good as it was when I was working as a French customer service agent and, you know, speaking French all day long, every single day, or when I was doing all my reading, all my podcasting, all my TV shows, all my films in French, when I was doing like an immersion bubble. It's not quite as good today as it was back then, but it has atrophied so much more slowly because I got to that high level. And the same is true for other languages. However, languages like German and Portuguese and even Swedish, right? I've discussed those on this channel, and I'm literally showing you these days myself reviving my German. Because those languages didn't reach that really high advanced level, they atrophy so much more quickly, and it's so much harder to maintain them over time. And that's why right now I'm on a mission to finally get my German back to where it was, but then finally into those advanced levels where it's going to be easier to maintain over time. And I think the next thing that is really helpful is to realize there is a difference between actively studying a language, you know, and still getting exposure to a language, right? So just because I'm not actively studying or actively maintaining my French right now, I still get exposure to French. I have some friends who I interact with in French, not all the time, but often enough, right? I still occasionally pull a book off the shelf and just read a few pages just for the pleasure of reading in French, right? And so again, just because I'm not actively studying French every day, it's not part of my routine or my daily habits right now, I still get exposure to it, right? And that is tremendously helpful. So I do think it's useful to differentiate those two things and realize that just because you're not actively studying it, you can still interact with the language. You can still make time for it, and that will really help you. You don't have to put the pressure on yourself of, you know, committing to all of your languages all the time. Of course, unless your lifestyle and your schedule allows you to do that, then that's amazing. And that's really all I have for you today, right? So again, I'm not gonna be so bold as to, you know, tell you how to live your life. I'm not gonna pretend that this decision is the same for everyone. I just wanted to acknowledge that it is real. A lot of us deal with it. I have it every single day. And I wanted to just share with you a few thoughts on how I personally manage this in my daily life, as well as those stories I told you about the different ways I have had to deal with this over time. Okay, everybody, I hope it was helpful. I hope it was thought-invoking and inspiring. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I know this is kind of it might be a controversial issue. I know that not everybody wants to think about this. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts, and I really hope you enjoyed the video.